At the young age of 12, Camellia sits in a church on the pew. She clasps her hands together but does not seem to be praying. In front of her, a priest is saying a sermon, but she isn't listening, simply staring at her hands. She looks up at the man next to her. I want to go home.
But isn't this more interesting?
No. Mephisto frowns, then shakes his head.
If you think about it, all this is yours as well. You should appreciate it.
I'd appreciate it more if I were reading about it. Mephisto gets ready to retort, but then spots the priest come over.
My Harold! It's so nice to see you. I almost didn't notice your radiance from...
The priest pauses, then looks down at Camellia.
I didn't know it was take your daughter to work day. Well, it wasn't. Not until this one insisted she see the grandest cathedral in central Rosaline. Well, isn't she an eager one?
The priest bends down to look at Camellia, who simply glares back at him.
Hello there. What's your name, Kleiner?
He holds out his hand. When she doesn't shake it, he looks at Mephisto.
She's a bit shy, isn't she?
Camellia had chomped down on his hand. She takes the commotion to jump off the pew and run out of the cathedral, smacking into several churchgoers as she escapes.
Stop! You get back here!
She exits the building before he can finish, running through the streets of central Rosaline, into the plaza and hiding behind a marble fountain. She lets out a sigh, sinking to the ground on the tile-paved streets. She hugs her knees close, her vision beginning to blur as tears pool in her eyes. Past the merchants looking at her with mild perplexion. She tries to hide her ears quickly with her hat. But then she squints. She could see someone in the alleyway, a young child with mid-length blonde hair. Slowly, she got up, making her way towards them. Years later, Camellia walks past the rose bushes to the herb garden, seeing Michaela teaching a 13-year-old Lucian how to cultivate.
You keep on adding too much water. Of course they're going to wilt. Isn't more nutrients good, though?
Well, it's all about the dosage. Camellia smirks, putting her hands on her hips as she watches. Michaela looks up and gives her a shy smile, then starts planting her own coneflower.
All it takes is a gentle touch, see? Like this.
Are you going to help, Cam?
Or are you just going to stand there and look smarmy?
Come on, Mika. You know I suck at gardening. Anyways, Mom wanted me to remind you to take your tonic.
Oh, shoot.
Thanks for reminding me. Lucian, I'll be right back, okay? He looks up at her with protest, then sighs, bending back down to continue his plant work, frowning as he waters his herbs. Michaela smiles at him as she leaves, taking off her apron.
Let's go. I have no desire to see your mom when she's pissed.
Do you know why Lucian's been so interested in herbs lately?
Well, you could ask him yourself.
I'd rather just wait for him to come to me. The two of them walk back into the house, past the servants' quarters. Camellia looks at the room, then back at Michaela. You know, I was thinking...
Well, that's a rarity.
Camellia snickers, elbowing her friend in the arm. Shut it! This is serious! I was going to say, I don't know why you insist on doing housework for us. Michaela looks downcast as Camellia continues to explain. You have other interests, and Mom has already told you you're part of the family.
This isn't the first time you brought this up, Camellia. I've told you this is what I want to do.
But don't you want to take a break sometimes?
Talking to you a few hours each day is my break, and I take my weekends.
That's not true. You still work while you talk to me.
Camellia. The two of them pause, hearing the sound of arguing. They rush into the front foyer to see Mephisto at the entrance, wearing a top hat and talking nonchalantly to Marigold, who looks irritated. I told you once, and I'll tell you twice.
There's no way you're talking to my son after last week.
Personally, I didn't see it as much of a big deal.
He leans against the front door, fiddling with the hat.
I simply took him out to the beach. Now, how is that too much?
He nearly poisoned himself with seawater. You need to understand just how much you're hurting this family.
Have you ever considered the fact you coddling him is what's hurting this family? I'm just showing him the world. What have you shown him, darling?
Don't you dare tell me how to raise my son.
Luna's son, you mean? Or have you already forgotten your dear best friend?
Camellia tries to focus on what they say next, but the landscape grew blurry before fading into a sea of chalk dust. She swore she could see a figure among the dispersed colors, watching her, waiting for her to say something. Its red eyes blinked, opening its mouth before dispersing into chalk as well. The world melted into a sea of muddy colors, but she could hear a muffled voice underneath the cacophony of silence.
Miss? Miss?
She groans, but the scenery didn't change. A shadow just barely loomed over her vision.
Oh, cripes. Well, desperate times call for desperate measures.
Camellia drifts off again, before she feels the pull of gravity and then cold water as she was tossed into the shallow tide. She woke with a start, flailing around in the water that was barely even 2 inches deep. She sputtered out sea salt.
What the heck?
She looks up, immediately being blinded for the light. However, she sees a figure come into view. A mop of ginger red hair, bright blue eyes, and a curious expression stared back at her, bent slightly over to observe. Camellia stares at the wooden boy owlishly.
Are you okay? You look quite frightened.
Camellia jumps to her feet, pointing at him with confusion and fear.
Ah! Ah!
Taking a moment to process what exactly she was looking at, the girl immediately gets into a fighting stance.
What did you do to Mika and Lucian? What do you mean? I didn't do anything.
Don't play dumb! You caused that big storm, didn't you?
Storm?
Her eyes widen as she realizes he genuinely doesn't know what she's talking about. Camellia lowers her stance, instead choosing to cross her arms. So you don't know, then?
No, I don't. But I do know you. You're the sister. It's nice to, meet you officially.
He holds out a wooden hand, eager to shake hers. Camellia simply looks down at it hesitantly, then instead chooses to look around. The wooden boy lowers his hand, choosing to shake it himself as he laughs nervously. He follows her as she walks out onto the shore, looking down at the near bleach-white sand and rose hips among the rocky ends of the beach. She squints, looking around. We were so far from shore. Where the heck did we wash up?
This is Calphos!
That makes no sense.
Well, sure it does.
The wooden boy then points at the rocky shores and the rosehip bushes.
The rocks are quite natural to our island, see? And those are the natural flowers, so...
No, I didn't mean that it... Ugh. She motions to the sand, which is stained a deep bleach color. This should be all stained black.
Huh? That's not right. Are you sure you're talking of Calphos?
Yes, I am! She looks over at the beach, squinting. She remembers looking at depictions of what Calphos looked like via old paintings, ones that survived the natural disaster. She furrows her brows, stopping in the middle of the beach. There were marbled rocks to the side, and the beach was covered in speckled white rocks. There were white flowers on the grass outside of the reach of the shore, sea champions, as Michaela had told her once, and patches of frift among the edges. Outside the reach of the beach were tall, thin trees that waved in the stale wind. Are we really here already? It should have taken another week or so.
Oh!
Camellia jumps up next to him, startled. Don't suddenly shout like that! The wooden boy looks at her quizzically, then points into the distance.
But I think I see your brother in the sand over there.
She looks toward where the doll is pointing, spotting Lucian face down in the sand. Letting out a gasp, she scrambles over to him, kicking up sand. The doll follows behind hesitantly.
Is he dead?
He better not be! We came here for a reason! She turns him over, then begins shaking him, face showing desperation. Lucian! Luca, wake up! After a moment of shaking him, he spits out sand and water, looking up at his sister as she continues to shake him frantically.
I'm awake! Stop shaking me!
She lets go of him, embarrassed of her own lack of composure. He groans, holding his head as he sits up. Lucian's ears pin back as he squints at the sun and feels the sand between his fingertips.
Where?
Calphos! Surprising, isn't it? Lucian turns to look at him, eyes wide.
Your sister had a similar response, but I know this place like the back of my hand, so...
Lucian begins quaking, lip quivering as he panics out of sheer excitement and embarrassment, as he realizes that the doll he'd been talking to possibly heard all of his vents and rants.
Are you okay? You're alive! I mean, you're really alive. That's great.
Can we be happy about this later? We need to find Michaela! Lucian quickly scrambles to his feet, now anxious for a completely different reason. Camellia and him search the beach, then spot her across the way, washed up on the shore in a fetal position. Camellia is the first to get her, rolling her on her back. Michaela! Michaela! Michaela doesn't respond, her face as pale as a ghost. She then panics on what to do, beginning to try to push water out of her lungs. Seeing it wasn't working, Camellia lowers her head to give her friend CPR, to which Lucian looks at her with wide eyes.
That's not how you do it!
Just as Camellia is about to make contact with Michaela, the maid's eyes snap open, looking up at her owlishly. Michaela furrows her brows up at Camellia. Hi? Camellia smiles with relief, then brings Michaela into a tight hug. Thank goodness! I thought you were dead!
You can't get rid of me that easily, Cam.
She sits up with Camelia's help, wincing as she looks down at her sun-dried body. She then looks up at their new wooden companion, who stands there awkwardly.
What?
He's hard to explain.
Actually, I'm pretty easy to explain.
He jumps around as Michaela stands up with Camellia. The three castaways look at him as he moves from foot to foot with excitement. Then he stills, trying to keep calm.
Introductions are in order. Hi, I'm Key.
Key?
Yup, I'm Tobias's little brother.
Wait, I already said that part, didn't I? You said you were a guide?
Well, not officially, but I know this island like the back of my hand, as I stated before. I'm practically a walking map.
Well then, show off your skills. Lucian and Michaela look at her uncomfortably, but Key seems excited to do so, beginning to bounce up and down again with enthusiasm, kicking up sand.
That's a great idea! I can explain while giving you all a tour. We've never really had any guests, so I'm very excited.
Without much hesitation, he begins walking forward, pointing to a path off the beach lined with tiles and stone. It has neatly made fencing, made with pliable branches that are stripped of all their bark. He continues to face them as he walks.
But, where are my manners? I don't think I really even caught your names.
Camellia slowly looks at Lucian, who looks obviously distraught. He stares at the ground as he continues to walk, dress shoes limply dragging in the sand. Well, I'm Camellia. Camellia then grabs Lucian's arm, pulling him close with a grin. And this is my brother, Lucian. But I'm sure you already must have known his name, right? He looks between the two of them, unsure of what to say. His expression shows no recognition as his wooden feet begin to clack against the tiles.
I don't know. It's really all right. Trust me. Either way, it's nice to officially meet you.
Though he gives Key a smile, Camellia can tell that he's in pain. She tries to comfort him, but he subtly moves her arm away, freeing himself. Key is none the wiser as they walk through the sandgrass and reeds, the solid path occasionally dispersed by white sand. He turns towards Michaela, who is looking around with interest.
What's your name?
Michaela.
Wow! All of you have such interesting names. When we get to Tobias, I should get him to put them in our name jar.
Name jar?
For our fish pond, there's Stefan, Alwil, Karis, Bran. If I may, what's your brother like?
He pauses his list, going quiet. He hums, thinking.
Really calm, considerate, and dependable. He taught me literally everything I know, too. So you can bet he's smart. He's practically a fountain of knowledge.
Wow. Huh. Does he know anything about illnesses?
I'm almost certain he does.
Michaela, who was mostly silent, suddenly pipes up. Is that bridge supposed to be broken?
Huh?
They all look, seeing that across the way, the bridge over the saltwater river separating the beach and the land was completely demolished. The beechwood was both splintered and half rotted. A plank falls into the river below, splashing into it.
No, it isn't. But sometimes storms do show up. They just haven't really done damage to this extent.
The four of them walk down the pathway, then look into the saltwater river, which is far down a rocky slope. He grimaces. This isn't normal at all, is it?
Well,
I thought you said you knew this place like the back of your hand!
Well, I do. I don't think I've been here for a bit. I was sleeping and now... It's okay. We can figure a way through. If we use a plank that fell down, we could probably use it as a makeshift raft, right? Oh! That's like an idea that Tobias would come up with. Well, I am known to be quite intelligent.
Camellia quickly pulls them both back up, snapping them out of their thoughts. No. For the love of... That's harebrained. If we don't have something to hold on to, those currents could wash us down the river, and you know how you are with seawater. You practically died the last time you were submerged.
Well, I survived this time around.
By the skin of your teeth? It's a good idea, but we need to find something to stabilize it. Michaela stands up straight, stroking her chin. Camellia turns, looking at her with a raised eyebrow. Here goes Miss Studious. Michaela quickly flicks Camelia's shoulder. Ow! We could stabilize it with a stick and rope. The three of them look at her with confusion, Camellia rubbing her arm with a wince. If we find a plank intact enough, theoretically we could put a rope on one side and or to the next. But we don't have a rope.
Oh! I can help with that!
They look up at him as he squints. Both Michaela and Camellia grimace, but he opens up the door on his stomach, pulling out a loop of hempen rope.
Ta-da!
The two women look at him with a barely veiled surprise. Did you make that?
No! Well, yes, but I didn't make it. I'm only borrowing the magic from my brother.
He quickly gives the rope to Camellia, who looks down at it with uncertainty. She hesitates to take it. Michaela rolls her eyes and snatches up the rope, getting to work on setting the makeshift plank boat up. She slides down the rocky slope, lifting up her skirt as she does so. Lucian sits on the ground, cradling his legs close. This causes his sister to look down at him, wanting to reach out her hands to comfort him and apologize for snapping. But as she lowers her hand...
All set! Just don't fall off. And push the boat to the other side when you get across.
Camellia jumps away from Lucian, who jumps to his feet, heading down. Slowly, he gets onto the boat. It's tied to a stake, driven into the ground. Stable for now. He grabs another plank to use it as an oar. Camellia watches him as he goes, then Michaela. She's left on the other side with Key.
Are you going to go?
Yeah. But first... I don't trust you. I don't know if you know that. He looks at her, his smile faltering. But that doesn't mean I'm not willing to. have a request.
I'll do whatever it takes.
Camellia chuckles, then looks down with solemn eyes, unsure of how to ask. But she still continues. My brother really wants to be your friend. Do you want that too?
Yes, absolutely. He seems very kind.
Then please, if you do, keep him safe and make sure he doesn't do anything that'll get himself hurt. He goes quiet for a moment. Then he slowly begins to nod.
I'm pretty good at that.
With that, she gives him a smile, then takes him onto the plank with her. He helps her oar across, and they meet Lucian and Michaela on the other side. He and Lucian stand next to each other, the wooden doll beginning to excitedly talk about his fish to Lucian, while the taller boy listens intently. Camellia gives them a sad look as they all climb up the other rocky slope. Michaela looks at her, before grabbing her hand and squeezing. Good on you for giving him some room to breathe. He really needs that. The older sister opens her mouth, beginning to want to protest, before she just hangs her head. No, that isn't what I did at all. The four of them walk further into the island in silence, kept in quiet as they think, their journey beginning.